Welcome everyone to a new episode of my comprehensive NFL player review series, Studs and Duds. If this is your first time catching Studs and Duds, this is actually my longest standing series, going back to when this channel first began as a Madden channel, where I use my ratings changes for my own custom Madden roster to discuss the rising and falling players around the NFL. And to this day, this system hasn't changed for me, as it's a great way to hit on how all of these players are performing on the field, for better or worse. So please, sit down, buckle up, and enjoy, as we've got a lot of players to talk about here today. Welcome in everybody to our 8th and final division of my Midseason Studs and Duds player review series. We got the NFC South here today. Just want to say thank you, everybody, whether this is your first Studs and Duds of the season, catching up on if you're a fan of one of these teams in this division, or if you binged all 8 episodes. It's been a little bit of a ride here through the middle of the season, but I'm excited to get back to some of our regular content, weekly game recaps. Going to start getting a little bit of draft content sprinkled in here. Actually have something planned here for later in the week that you guys can look forward to, tier makers, all that stuff. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. If you could, please hit that like button down below. It really does help me out. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss all of that content I was alluding to. I originally had Emeka Egbuka here because number one, he deserves it. And number two, just like JSN, I feel like he's got the same hive coming out of Ohio State that would be mad at me if I made anybody else other than him the super stud. But the more I thought about it and the more film I've watched on this Bucs team, I got to go with Tyke Smith as the super stud. This dude has been incredible in his second season here, in his full conversion to a real safety role after playing primarily nickel corner in his rookie season. And yeah, I'm a little bit biased here. I stuck my neck out for Tyke Smith as a top 50 player in that draft class, and my number one safety in that draft class. Called him one of the primary steals of the draft when he fell to the Bucs where he did in the back end of the 3rd round. So I might be a little more prone to celebrate this player, but I don't think highlighting just how good he's been on this Bucs team and giving him the love he deserves from the season is a biased take at all. He has been, in my opinion, a Pro Bowl caliber safety inside the NFC this year. And what's even more cool here is my pro comp on him was Antoine Winfield Jr., specifically the slot cornerback stuff, with some hopes that maybe if he played safety, he could look like Antoine Winfield does as a safety for the Bucs. And now we just get to see 2 of these guys, almost identical physical traits, but beyond that, very similar styles of players. Incredibly high IQ, physical athletes with a ton of burst to the ball, quick twitch safeties that have a lot of experience playing in a slot corner style position that really makes them overall more balanced cover players. And we've seen all that with Tyke Smith. We've seen him break into intermediate routes and deflect passes, showing off that closing speed. We've seen him rally to the flat and make incredible tackles. We've seen him come up and fill the run as a strong safety, as a slot corner. And this year we've even seen him be a single high center fielding free safety, playing about 20% of his snaps as a true single high free safety pre-snap. But the fact that they do have 2 of these guys and what I feel about Antoine Winfield, it really keeps offenses guessing, and it makes you feel these guys' presence really across the entire full length of the football field. So Tyke Smith gets a +5 in the ratings here, up to an 82. And if he keeps this up for the rest of the season, we might get the opportunity to talk about Tyke Smith as one of the 8 to 10 best overall safeties in the NFL. Hell, I don't think it's crazy to even at least bring him into the conversation there with how well he's playing in his first season really as a true safety this year. But let's flip over to the offense and talk about some of these players on the Bucs offense. Going to start with Baker Mayfield, who it's a little bit unfortunate if you're a Bucs fan that this division had to go last after several weeks have passed since we began the midseason series, because if we did this a couple weeks ago, it probably would have been a higher boost for Baker Mayfield on that really MVP run that he was on for the first third of the season. Felt like he could do no wrong despite the reckless nature of this offense, extending plays, what he was doing as a scrambler, oftentimes on like 3rd and long, just picking up these crazy first downs. So like him as a ball carrier and his impact as a scrambler, That's something we have to bring up as a boost for Baker Mayfield here. But it felt like he couldn't miss a throw. Even when he was putting the ball in harm's way, he was getting away with it. Well, the last few weeks, I'll be honest, we've had to pump the brakes on Baker Mayfield a little bit. He's been much more reckless with the football. And in fact, he's climbed up to the 4th highest turnover-worthy play rate in the league. A lot of it's been, strip sack fumbles and that kind of stuff, as well as some questionable decisions and some of the accuracy stuff in recent weeks. Feels like he's missing more throws than he did at the beginning of the season. I still think he deserves praise. I don't want to end this on a negative note. He's going up 82 to an 83. He absolutely is a franchise quarterback for the Bucs, and I would hate to see where this team would be this year without him. It's just a little bit of a bummer that this isn't the mega boost that Bucs fans might have gotten to see from him, if we did this after week 7, for example. But with these running backs, all 3 of them on this roster are going to go up. So I'll reveal them all right now. It's Bucky Irving, up 1 to an 85. Rachaad White, up 2 to a 79. And then Sean Tucker, +2, up to a 74. But let's go through these guys one by one. Bucky Irving, it was really just a month of it. Unfortunately, he gets hurt, and it's been a long process for him to get back on the field, but just another year of him proving that he is one of the most elusive backs in the NFL, making that impact in the receiving game. He's been a big loss for this Bucs offense. Just having that check down target underneath that can turn a 3rd and 6 into a 1st down almost with ease if you're Bucky Irving. That's been a big loss. But then, of course, the explosiveness and the creativity he brings to their run game. Even if these other running backs are playing well, they can't wait to get Bucky Irving back because he's played like one of the better running backs in the league since he stepped into it. But Rachaad White is going to get a +2. Credit where credit's due. I mean, since Bucky Irving has been gunning for Rachaad White's job, I really think we've seen Rachaad White run with more of a physical nature than we've ever seen from him. I really don't think it's a coincidence with his money and his job kind of on the line here. And he hasn't been as dynamic as Bucky Irving, as really the lead back for this team, but he has had some really tough runs, yards after contact, getting through the trenches and that kind of stuff. He's continued to be an excellent pass protector and do all of the 3rd down work that he's been so good at as well. So it's a +2 for White. And I've certainly discussed over the years with Rachaad White, as I've had my frustrations with him, as, really he has been their lead runner for a while now. I always talked about I would rather have more of a high upside running back in there. Well, they have that in Bucky Irving, but I've always kind of said, I probably wouldn't extend Rachaad White. But now that he is an RB2, that contract's actually getting a lot cheaper, I think, for Rachaad White, whereas had he continue to be a primary lead back and, try to get north of $10 million, I wouldn't give White that. But I think giving him an extension as an RB2, somewhere in the $5 or $6 million range, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucs do that with him, because he does bring a lot to the table, especially with that physical brand of running that he's providing right now. Though Sean Tucker looking as good as he has might give you second thoughts about that and might make you say we can save some money by letting Rachaad White go. So it's far from a given. I just know that they love Rachaad White in that building. But Sean Tucker, in his 3rd year here, came into the league undrafted, hardly saw the field in his first year, and then last year we saw some crazy explosive flashes from him. He was a highlight player in this series last year, where I even went as far as saying on his explosive runs, he looks very Jonathan Taylor-esque. He's not Jonathan Taylor, right? We talked about him in the Colts deep dive, how the level he's playing at. But just like when he's out in space, that long, striding, thick athlete that he is, there's a lot of shades of that type of explosive player. And these last 2 weeks, especially last week against the Bills, it felt like the Bills couldn't keep up with this dude. And he has a lot of juice. He might be the best RB3 in the league right now. It's been a smaller sample size, so it's hard to say that with certainty that Sean Tucker is this bona fide star as a potential starting running back and elite RB3 and all this kind of stuff. But man, he looks good seemingly every time they give him an opportunity. So it's a +2 for him, like we said. But this is where we'll give our love to Emeka Egbuka. Like I said, very easily could have been the Super Stud Award winner, and I'm sure there's going to be some fans out there mad at me that I didn't make him the highlight player for the Bucs here. But yeah, he's basically saved the Bucs season on offense with all the injuries they've had at wide receiver. Not just Evans and Godwin, but even even down to like McMillan hasn't been available for them. And Igbokwe has just had some monster performances, man. And I talked about him a lot earlier in the year. You know, he had that stretch of games, week 3 through 5, where he had about 350 receiving yards just in those 3 weeks. And what's really impressed me about Igbokwe is how he's shown to be a contributor as a vertical weapon. And it's eerily familiar to what we've seen from JSN, where he's not necessarily burning you over the top, but he's so good at double moves. He accelerates so well out of those double moves, and he's just a sharp route runner that he can get a step, maybe a step and a half on you as a vertical weapon. And then you have a quarterback like Baker that can pin it on you in the perfect spot. And he's got an excellent ability to reach those hands out, pluck these balls, win tough catches down the field. Having that vertical element in there is something that we didn't get to see from him in his role at Ohio State. My comp on him coming out was a supercharged Jacoby Myers. I thought his floor as a first-round draft pick was remarkably high. I think we've seen an upside from Igbokwe that maybe wasn't in that draft eval on him, for him to be someday this team's true number 1 wide receiver. Now, with that said, I do think in the last month plus of football, really since he has had to undeniably be this team's number 1 wide receiver without Mike Evans out there, we've seen some hiccups from him. There's been some pretty shaky drops from him. He's actually struggled to come down with contested catches in this stretch. He's 1 for 6 on his last 6 contested catch looks there, so he's down to 7 out of 20 on this season. After he had a contested catch win in each of his first 6 games, he only has 1 in his last 4. I don't think he's all the way there as a bona fide number 1 wide receiver yet. Those, that's a high benchmark to clear. But we have seen some really exciting stuff from Emeka Igbokwe, to be sure. So it's a +5 for him, from a 75 up to an 80. But then Tez Johnson, the other rookie wide receiver here, he stepped up and made some plays. It hasn't all been perfect. I think there have been some moments, him kind of getting smacked after the catch, some of the lack of size. There's been some moments where you do still watch him and play, and you're like, man, that guy is really small, and his catch radius is very small. But the dude can get open. He's had some vertical catches down the field. He's been a red zone threat at times. He's got 4 touchdowns on the year. Kind of gets lost by the defense. And, the 4.55 40 on him was bizarre. Just watch the tape with him. Like, he is a much faster player than that. It's evident. And I think if nothing else, he can be a really nice wide receiver 4 because he can line up inside and out. He really can threaten to all 3 levels. I don't know how practical he is as a full-time starter. We'll continue to evaluate that, but he's definitely checked boxes and never should have fallen to the 7th round. That much is very clear with how Tez Johnson's playing right now. But then on the offensive line, just a couple of these lower-level veterans. One of their starters, Ben Bredesen, +2, up to a 70. He's been just a very nice plug-in, low-end free agent addition that they did extend this offseason. He continues to pass protect very well. He's not the best in regards to his run blocking, to say the least, but he's been very reliable and deserves to keep going up. And then Mike Jordan as well. Once upon a time, 4, maybe 5 years ago, when he was on the Bengals, and he was the one that gave Joe Burrow his first significant injury, I think in Burrow's rookie season, I actually called Mike Jordan the worst player in the NFL, because my take is the worst player in the NFL isn't just the horrible guy that doesn't get playing time. It's the guy that is getting playing time and actively hurts his team every single week. And that used to be Mike Jordan. He's bounced around the league. He's changed his name. He used to be Michael Jordan. Doesn't want to go by that anymore. Now he goes by Mike, at least in most places I've looked. But credit where credit's due. I mean, he's got some physical traits for the position, and he has taken to all of these different offensive line coaches that have been in his ear as he's bounced around from team to team. He even played okay relative to his expectations in New England last year, and then they did release him. But the Bucs maybe like what they saw, clearly, and they bring him in here, and he has kind of been, I can't say a godsend, because he's only started 5 games, has been kind of in and out of the lineup, and that's just an exaggeration to how good of a football player he is, as we're only bumping him up to a 67. But it kind of reminds me of when Ben Bredesen played well for them early last year, and then, kind of really won that job, and it became clear that he's kind of a low-end starter for them, it's kind of like the early stages of that, where he's playing some good football right now. He really just had that one horrible game against Detroit. That was when Ali McNeil came back and Detroit was coming off a loss and they were pissed off and they got like 40 pressures that game. Mike Jordan was a big problem that week. But in his 4 other starts, he's allowed either 1 or 2 pressures in all of his other starts. So much more dependable in those other games. So we've seen a little bit of something from him, and that was more time than I ever thought we would spend on Mike Jordan at 28 years old here. But I guess that is fascinating too, that he is not even 28 yet. He's been in the league for 7 years. He was so young as a 4th-round pick coming out of Ohio State. It's just been a long development path for him. But that is our last offensive player here on the Bucs. Let's flip over to the defense. Some good, some bad. This has been a pretty up and down season for this Bucs defense. But let's start on a positive note with a pair of these rookie defensive linemen that are starting to show up, make some splash plays, and contribute to this D-line. So you got Elijah Roberts, 5th-round pick out of SMU. He's made the conversion really inside after being an edge player at SMU, but someone that had really raw tape but tested really well and was one of those kind of, at the time it felt like a draft and stash athlete. But with Kalijah Cansey getting hurt for this season, they really were looking for somebody to be that athletic interior rusher next to Vita Vea. And honestly, Elijah Roberts has done a very valiant job giving them something there. He's not providing the efficiency that Kalijah Cansey did, certainly. And he's got a long way to go as he makes this kind of positional transition into the NFL. But it is a +5 for Roberts, 6'4 to a 64 to a 69. He's shown off a good rip move and an ability to get in there with some one-on-one pass rush wins, which is really good to see considering how raw he was coming out. And then an undrafted pickup here, Elijah Simmons. There was so much attention on the Florida kid. I can't remember his name, but the guy that weighed like 460 pounds or whatever, signing here with the Bucs. But it was actually Elijah Simmons at just under, about 6'2", 340 pounds, being that stocky nose tackle that ends up making this team and carving out some reps. If we're talking about my roster, he wasn't on it yet. So we created him at a 66 rating there, and he has done what they've asked of him as that space-eating nose tackle. It's been very limited snaps, so can't go too crazy here. We got to see more. He's only played 78 snaps on the season, scattered throughout 8 different games. So very much just a rotational role right now. But it's been fun to see what the Tennessee undrafted product has been able to bring to the table here. But there's going to be some red here with some of these veterans. Greg Gaines on the interior of the D-line. I think you can attribute some of these struggles that this Bucs run defense has had really to all 3 of these players. But Greg Gaines, in years past, has been a pretty nice contributor, especially as a first man off the bench, but just as a solid D tackle that can get off blocks and impact the run. That hasn't been the case this year. He's given up more ground on combo blocks as well, so he had to come down, and this has been a couple years of regression for him as well. He signed a contract with the Bucs at like 1 year, $3.5 million. I thought based on his resume, he would get more than that. But clearly the NFL pro scouts putting together their free agency boards and stuff could kind of see that this isn't the same Greg Gaines we're looking at here. So a -2 for him down to a 73. And then we got Hassan Reddick, -2 down to a 79. He's still gotten some pressures. I think he still threatens the corner, forces QBs to step up. He still is a useful edge rusher, but he just keeps coming down from where he was several years ago on the Eagles. Obviously just a disaster season last year. I thought he was maybe going to be a nice bounce back piece for the Bucs. And again, the athleticism, the speed, the cornering ability, it's been a weapon for Todd Bowles to tap into. He's had a few sacks, and it's not all bad, but his ability to really deconstruct blocks, get quick wins and beat tackles one-on-one, it's not what it used to be. So I felt it necessary to drop him. And then Levante David, this is also a continuation of his regression. I mean, he's a 36-year-old Hall of Fame caliber linebacker. It is what it is. He can't get into position like he once did. He's working his ass off, I think, to account for that and adapting his game, to his body's capabilities at this point in time, but he's certainly not the coverage impact he once was. And even, the missed tackle rate has skyrocketed because of what we said about his inability to consistently get in the right position. He's not a bad player, right? He's down to his 78. He still has impressive wins due to his mind. He is one of the smartest overall defensive players in the league today with all that Rolodex filled up of information and all that. So he's still a useful player, but there's some moments with Lavonte David that kind of just make you go like, man, like I miss the old Lavonte David, especially when he's like trying to tackle guys towards the sideline and move around the field left to right. It's just not the same guy. But then Servasia Dennis, I'm going to give Dennis a +2, and I think some Bucs fans are like, huh? What are you talking about? Raising Servasia Dennis. He's been one of the biggest liabilities on any defense in the league, and I agree. His coverage abilities have been a major issue, and if we're talking about how I changed his ratings here, I did lower his coverage capabilities quite a bit, actually. Like, he has cost them games this year, not really knowing what he's supposed to do in coverage, getting turned around, just the ugliest of losses. There's always fun conversations about, like, how much does coverage really matter for a linebacker? Like, is that really something we should be talking up with these players and stuff? Well, just watch what Servasia Dennis has done to this Bucs defense, and that'll give you your answer there. But his run defense has been pretty good. Like, he does have the right mentality to play the run. He is breaking down the run much better than I think we've seen from him in years past. I think the development in that stage has been there, and I think that's the reason he's still playing for this Bucs team. If he wasn't playing great against the run, which we know Todd Bowles values highly, he would have been benched by now. Hopefully the coverage stuff can come around, because right now he's maybe the most polarizing player in the league, in the sense of one skill set's looking pretty good and one is just horrible. But with the boost to his run defense, I think he is at least deserves to go up with his rating as an overall linebacker. But then into the secondary, Jamel Dean has had an awesome season, and he was a super stud candidate as well. He's getting a +3 here, up to an 85 rating, maybe having the best year of his career, honestly. Now, he did just get banged up. Hate to see that, because he's had a hard time staying healthy over the course of his career. So hopefully he can get back out there soon. But number one with him, the coverage has been outstanding. He's got the best reception percentage allowed on his career at just 43%. That's a special number, by the way. Like, I've said this before, but 60% is kind of like solid. 50% is really good. If you're in the 40s, like, you're doing a great job denying passes. So he's been targeted 37 times this year. He's allowed just 16 receptions. Again, that's 43% reception percentage. He's defended 4 of those passes, 3 of them picks, and he's doing a really good job, like, baiting QBs, high-lowing the QB, converting those picks. So the coverage has been outstanding. He's allowed just 212 yards on the entire season. That's a good number to have halfway through the year. But on top of that, his run defense, it's just so special. I mean, he's built like some modern linebackers. He's listed at 6'1", 206. He might play even heavier than that. I don't know, but he's getting off blocks. He's been one of the more reliable overall run defenders on this entire team. He hasn't missed a tackle this year, by the way. That's insane. And then on top of all of it, against the Niners in Week 6, we get to see him put on like one of the cleanest, genuine pass rush moves you'll see from a defensive back. He puts on like a stab, dip, and rip move against the tight end and gets a strip sack fumble that was just glorious, like showing off like all of the different things he can do as a defensive back. He's a pending free agent. I think they might end up letting him go because they just paid Zion McCollum. They drafted all these guys this year. Dean has had a hard time staying healthy. They have other contracts to worry about. Maybe they bring him back, and that'd be great for them. But if I'm another team looking at Jamel Dean, I would absolutely pay him because he has inside-out flexibility. And I think with what he's showing as a run defender with his build, he has so much long-term projection to make a safety move, kind of like Jalen Ramsey's doing for the Steelers right now. I think you could get a couple years out of Jamel Dean as a corner, and then once that age comes for him and he slows down a little bit, you can just move him to safety, and I think he could be really good back there. So he's going to be, assuming he does hit the market, he's going to be one of the bigger name signings that I'm excited when a team gets him, or if the Bucs get him back. Things are getting pretty insane with that secondary, given what we said about Tyke Smith. And one more young player here, Jacob Parrish, has been awesome in the slot. You're never going to be able to expect lockdown coverage from any slot corner, but let alone a 21-year-old rookie. But he's been very competitive as a slot corner. Of course, some games better than others, but he's disrupted some passes. He's been active as a run defender. He has totally filled right into that slot corner spot and allowed Tyke Smith to step back and be that impactful safety across the whole field. So he gets a +3 up to a 73 to round out our Bucs here. But next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons, and for their midseason Super Stud Award winner, it's a big one here. It's their first pick in this draft, rookie edge Jalen Walker, getting a +4 here, up to a 74 in the ratings. And he definitely is still a work in progress. That was always going to be the case with him, who was more of a linebacker at Georgia than anything, trying to learn really in many ways a new position. Not that he never played edge at Georgia, but a very different role here at the next level. And of course, going against NFL level competition. So it's not that it's all perfect here, obviously, with that 74 rating. You know, you see he's still 94th out of 122 eligible players in pass rush win rate. It's been a lot of splash plays as a pass rusher, but it's good to see those. And I think overall, you see a guy that can certainly play edge at the next level. He looks the part to me. In some of those splash wins as a rusher, you see the power in his punches, able to displace some offensive linemen with those stabs in his arms. And then he does have really special bend. Even if I was a little bit hesitant to call Jalen Walker like a top 10 draft pick, like some people did, my favorite thing about him as a rusher was that natural torque and the bend that he does have. And I think on most of his impressive pass rush wins, it's the bend that you see from him, whether he's looping inside and reaching an angle that an offensive guard can't quite reach with his burst and the bend, or to be able to turn that corner. He had a strip sack in that Colts game against Daniel Jones where you can see him able to, even if he's not necessarily winning the rep, just quickly dip and rip and find the football. And that takes me to the other thing with him, like just his tenacity and just the overall like game awareness and the whole idea that he's just a football player and he's going to figure it out. I think you're really seeing that come through, and maybe even more than it did in his Georgia tape, just getting to stick and play edge rusher and really hone in on his craft there. So it's definitely a lot of positive signs early in his Falcons career here. And the other side of that is the run defense as well has been pretty good for him. He's really sticking his head in there, playing with that tenacity and again, game awareness against the run to find the football, get some defensive stops in that phase as well. Really excited to see what the ceiling is on him and how far this goes with him as we move forward. But we will now bounce over to the offensive side of things for the Falcons, and we'll start here by raising Bijan Robinson +2, 92 to a 94, creeping up towards being my top-rated running back in the league, trying to keep pace with Jonathan Taylor, who we talked about in the AFC South episode. But the LaDainian Tomlinson comp on Bijan Robinson, that's what I had on him coming out. It's been fun to see that really surface. Even on some of these broadcasts, they're playing clips of LaDainian Tomlinson, obviously one of the best running backs of all time. I mean, the tape shows you a guy that is of that caliber in Bijan Robinson. He's got a long way to go before he cements himself as a Hall of Famer and all that stuff. But just the way he moves, the jump cuts, the ability to make guys miss. He does lead the NFL in missed tackles forced. And he's had those explosive runs this year. He's such an impact as a receiving entity as well. They'll actually just put him out as a slot wide receiver. I think he's probably the closest thing to like Christian McCaffrey right now, where he actually is just a well-rounded receiving player. Like, you stick him out there out wide, and you have to treat him like you would a slot wide receiver, and that brings a ton of value to the table with a lot of the different formational stuff that they've been able to do. So Bijan getting his love here. Again, +2 up to a 94. And then Drake London as well. Talk about a receiving entity. He just keeps climbing up and up and up on the field with his ability to elevate and make these spectacular catches with that big frame, but also in the ratings as well. He gets a +2 up to an 88. And this has been with some very inconsistent quarterback play this year. He just continues to impress in his ability to overcome that. He continues to wow with his ability to consistently win at the catch point. He's at a 54.5% contested catch win rate again this year. He's been north of 50% every single year of his career. And I can't say enough about that. We call a lot of these jump balls, red zone targets, 50-50 balls. In reality, those type of targets are more 40-60 balls in the wrong direction. If you can actually win those at a 50 to 55% rate, as Drake London does, it's just immensely valuable. And you see what he does in that Patriots game where they did almost upset the Patriots. I mean, he dominated that football game. He looked like one of the best wide receivers in the league that week, and he's getting closer and closer to the point that we can really view Drake London as a tier 1 elite wide receiver. I still think you want to see that established, 1,500 plus yard season in regards to production before we're putting him in the same category as Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and that type of stuff. But anything short of that, I am here for all of the Drake London praise. Super underrated route runner too. I talked about that in the Falcons deep dive. You think about Drake London as this former basketball player and the boxing out contested catch win ability, but he really does separate over the middle of the field. He's very savvy and physical, as a route runner to create the a step or a step and a half of separation that he needs to win these tough catches at an even higher clip. So I have just been so blown away by Drake London since he came into the league. He's honestly, I've said this before, but he's kind of reshaped in many ways how I view those slower wide receivers out there, in that there really are ways to dominate and be one of the best players at this position, even if you don't have high-end speed. In fact, Drake London's one of the slower overall starting wide receivers in the league, yet he's one of the better ones. There's so many different ways with savviness and physicality to dominate at this position, and he is teach tape to anybody in some semblance of an archetype like this, though. It's hard to be 6'4", 215 with as fast of feet as Drake London has. His agility is spectacular, even if the long speed isn't his biggest asset. But anyway, let's talk about the other starting wide receiver here. We'll see how much longer he's the starting wide receiver if he keeps playing like this. Darnell Mooney, I don't know, man. Like, he was really good last year, and this year he's been a little bit banged up, but he can't seem to catch the football this year. It's been hard to watch is an understatement. Drop rates at 27% right now. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. On 40 targets, he's got those 6 drops. He's only 2 for 6 on contested catch targets as well. The separation hasn't been as good. It's a -2 for now because he has missed some games. We're talking about a pretty small sample size here of very poor play. Definitely the worst play of his career. Just last year, he was a very high-end number 2 wide receiver for this team, and the quarterback play has been so inconsistent that I'm willing to make a few excuses for now on Darnell Mooney to see if he can turn this thing around, but going to be an interesting player to revisit when we get to the end of the year. This could be a tanking effort in terms of how far we drop the ratings on Darnell Mooney, and very much could be heading towards like a release here in Atlanta. He's been that bad. But then on the offensive line, a couple of players stepping up here. So at right tackle, Elijah Wilkinson, it's nothing special here. He's been a journeyman veteran here. He's in at least his second stint here in Atlanta, but they needed somebody to step up when they lose their right tackle for the year in Caleb McGarry, and Wilkinson's done a good enough job there. Again, you're never going to expect perfection when you have to ask a backup to be a full-time starter. There's been some games where he has been getting beat in pass pro especially, But for the most part, you haven't had to worry about him too much. There has been a lot of penalties in there, 7 penalties. But the run blocking's been pretty solid from him as well, just as it was way back in 2022 when I think he was starting at like left guard for this team. So he's been a nice asset for them for what he is. It's a +2 for him up to a 69. One of the better backup linemen in the league. And then Ryan Neutzel, their starting center, who they were really counting on checking boxes and stepping up and developing in a sense when they let Drew Dahlman leave in free agency. And he hasn't been as good as Drew Dahlman, certainly, but he has been of a starting caliber there at center. He is their type in this wide zone run game. He's a great athlete, can get out in that bucket step and reach block, and he's been as well adequate in pass pro. This system does a good job of protecting these guys with play action and the likes, but overall, he's been a good run blocker and a serviceable pass blocker, with some games worse than others, certainly. And in recent weeks, if you're going off recency bias, some Falcons fans might say, he hasn't been so great in pass pro. That's fair. The Patriots and Colts got through him a few times. But you go back to week 3 through 7, he didn't allow a single pressure in any of those 4 starts. So there's been some good play in there as well in regards to the pass pro. But then the last player in the offense, it's Kirk Cousins. He's going to come down. It kind of like we said with Darnell Mooney, it's just been kind of hard to watch. And we're going to get a longer look at Kirk Cousins. It's a -2 for him down to a 72 as his fall from grace continues. But yeah, it's weird that it's such a mental thing right now. Like, at least with Kirk Cousins, you would think he would come in and know the offense, be on the same page with these wide receivers, and at least be able to like steer the ship a little bit. That's what's really been eye-opening, is the amount of miscommunications, and it just feels like, I mean, many of his dropbacks feel like you're putting in like a rookie quarterback that just doesn't really know what's going on. That's been the bigger thing with Kirk Cousins, on top of the clear drop-off and physical capabilities. So we'll see, like, with first-team reps, now that he kind of might have some motivation to like earn a starting job, maybe even here next year, depending on how long Michael Penix's injury kind of drags on. I wouldn't be surprised if Kirk Cousins settles back down and plays better football here, but he definitely needs to come down for how bad he's looked in some limited looks here for the Falcons in 2025. But we've got a bunch of players on this defense to talk about. The defense hasn't been perfect this year, but there's been a lot of positives that we can hit on here in an otherwise pretty disastrous season for Atlanta. And the other rookie edge rusher, James Pierce Jr., he's also going to get a +1 up to a 74, the same rating as Jalen Walker there. And I think he's also someone to get really excited about, even if the first round pick that they gave to come back up and get him is looking like a top 10 draft pick, and that stings. At least if you're a Falcons fan, you can say, well, at least like, it's not like this was the Titans trading away A.J. Brown and drafting Treylon Burks or something like that. Like, at least you're getting a player back out of it that is contributing here. And I think James Pierce is a really nice compliment to Jalen Walker. I always thought this, and continue to see from the film of going through these guys' tape for this season. I still think James Pierce is the better, like, pure pass rusher than Jalen Walker. He's not nearly what Jalen Walker has done in run defense. But they have very complementary skill sets in that sense, where I think James Pierce is really good at compressing the pocket. That bull rush is so underrated for him. You see that listed weight at like 245, 250 pounds. You see the 4.4 speed or whatever he ran. And you think of him as maybe more of a speed rusher. He can threaten the corner, and I like that about him. But it is that pop in his hands and the impressive core power that he has to bull rush and flush the quarterback out of the pocket, where a guy like Jalen Walker is really instinctive at peeling off and pursuing and bending around blocks to clean that type of stuff up. I could see this really developing into a dynamic duo of incredibly athletic first-round edge rushers here, and I do think you've seen James Pierce check a lot of those boxes as far as being able to win with that bull rush and a couple of different counter moves to get after the QB and apply his skill set to the next level. So it's a +1 for him, and these guys are really just getting started here. And then we go to the interior of the defensive line, and there's a bunch of names here, so let's get through them. The first guy on my list is Zach Harrison. He's really stood out. I think on a snap-by-snap basis, he's been their best pass rusher, and that's really fun to see because even if this year he hasn't been as good of a run defender, in years past, he's actually showed a lot of flashes, kind of getting off blocks, being a little more of a hybrid end in the former system compared to this year, where he's more of just a true defensive tackle. I think that's probably why you're seeing less of an impact from him as a run defender, but really getting to just focus on getting after the QB on passing downs. You're seeing a legitimate bull rush from him that is really impacting the QB. Again, I think he's been their best overall, most impactful pass rusher in just the ability to beat a man. And you're seeing some complementary moves to get off blocks as well on top of the bull rush to really keep guards guessing. So it's a +2 for him as well. He's a fascinating player because he was a high recruit, kind of a way too early first round mock draft kind of guy that fell apart a little bit in his final time at Ohio State, but was a third round pick with a lot of upside as well. So you pair that now with James Pierce, with Jalen Walker, all young, talented guys. Zach Harrison is just 24 years old, by the way. I think even if this season's been a disaster, and even if this does need to head towards a coaching change and a regime change here, you at least have some building blocks to get after the QB up front. And then some of these other pieces are a part of that as well. Ruka Rororo's been okay this year. He's really showing off his natural athleticism on all the twists and stunts and games that Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich are running with this defense. They really model this pass rush after the Rams front. And Ororo is in many ways kind of their Braden Fisk. He's not quite as twitchy as Braden Fisk, but the same idea where, okay, you're not really making an impact as a run defender. You're not really beating guys one-on-one, but what we can do is get you to kind of get up out of your stance, get up on the move, and loop in through a lane and impact the QB. So he's up to 17 pressures, a couple sacks in there, and they're getting some usefulness out of him. Still want to see some major developments, though, with his ability to actually hold his own against the run and be a more complete player. Like, for him to be where he's at right now as the 35th pick in the draft that they traded up to get, I still can't really endorse that move, but it's good to see them getting some contributions from him. So he's up 1 to a 70. And then Sam Roberts, total definition of the type of player that makes this series so great. You're not going to get a whole lot of Sam Roberts analysis out there. He was a 6th round pick by the Patriots in 2022. He didn't even have 200 career snaps before this year. And even this year, he's only played 100 snaps, but they've all come recently. They snagged him from the Panthers, I would presume from their practice squad. It's turned into a pretty deep D line there in Carolina. But this dude's got some twitch as a rusher. He's got a rip move. He's got a lot of core power, 6'5", 300 pounds, kind of the idea of Chris Jones around that build where you're kind of tall but powerful and just kind of keep coming. His pass rush wins look like a lot of Chris Jones's pass rush wins. He's got 4 pressures on the year. He's only got 41 pass rush snaps on the year. So obviously he's never going to be Chris Jones, but he has been a part of this pass rush plan overall. And he's also made a couple stops against the run on top of it, doing a little bit of everything. So it's a +2 for the very unknown Sam Roberts. And then Brandon Dorlus as well, that kind of hybrid end. Just kind of copy and paste a lot of the stuff I said about Ruka Rororo here, where they're taking that athletic interior body and really manufacturing some production for him and tapping into his twitch as a guy that was more of an edge rusher at Oregon. But he's got 4.5 sacks this year on just 9 pressures. So when he comes clean, he's able to get after it and finish some plays. So it's a +1 for Dorlus. And then LaCale London as well, another classic studs and duds type of guy here. And it's fun to see him get back out there. He was actually one of those guys I called out in the 2024 Falcons deep dive when I had been grinding Falcons tape from their 2023 season. LaCale London totally popped to me as someone that was able to get off blocks and make an impact against the run. The new staff comes in and doesn't identify his talent. He spends last year in the practice squad, didn't play at all. But this year they've seen it, and he's recently been getting out there. 5 defensive stops in the last 2 weeks alone. Just a strong body, giving it his all out of Western Illinois. I think he's a nice rotational early down run defender. I do. 28 years old, has hardly played in the league. Small school guy that went undrafted, but these types of guys have value in the league. But then we go to the second level. We got Divine Diablo, had an excellent start to the season, and then unfortunately he goes down with an injury. But there's no other way to put it. He was just flying around. 4 pass breakups, that former safety out of Virginia Tech, making an impact in this team's pass defense. He had 6 pressures on the year, really looking tough to block as a blitzer, and getting to the ball, making plays in the run game too, was just very complete. Looked like a really nice value signing. Hopefully he can get back healthy for this team at some point, because this was looking like a gem of an addition for this team in this front office. And then with him going down, they have turned to Ronnie Harrison, kind of that hybrid linebacker safety that's been around different spots in the league. And they're mostly playing him in Divine Diablo's spot. It's been a little bit more of a safety-oriented role, kind of that true weak side backer. He's kind of rotated with J.D. Bertrand, whereas Divine Diablo was able to just get 3-down work. But it's kind of the same idea. I mean, Ronnie Harrison has shown that he can still play in a specific role with that speed, running the alley, finding the football. It's been a little hit or miss as a tackler, but you've definitely seen some splash plays from him where he arrives and you're like, who's number 36? Oh, Ronnie Harrison's still playing. That's pretty cool. So it's a +2 for Ronnie Harrison as well, 69 to a 71. But then we go to the secondary. I'm going to lower D. Alford. It's a -1, and he's just an incredibly streaky player. He's had some good games in there against Buffalo and Miami where he shows he can still play, but there's some real stinkers out there as well. And they've really gone away from him as their slot corner as well, where he's probably at his best as a cover player. They've had Billy Bowman playing in that role. We're going to talk about Billy Bowman in a second. But yeah, D. Alfred's he's really struggled as a run defender at 5'11", 175. They've stuck him outside a little bit this year. They've just kind of moved him around, but he's definitely had a falling out, not really viewed as a full-time starter with this team anymore at this point. So penalizing him a little bit, -1 down to a 74. And then the guy really taking his job is Billy Bowman. And he is interesting as well. It's a +1 up to a 69. And I think the splash plays you've seen from him are incredibly exciting if you're a Falcons fan. I'm a little bit worried about his overall brand as a player. I mean, he's missing 22% of his tackles. He's also tiny. 5'10" is generous on his listed weight. Now, he's thicker than Alford. He's a more physical overall player, and that's why they like him in the slot. He was more of a safety at Oklahoma, plays with more of a physical style. But the end result is still a lot of bad angles and missed tackles as a run defender, which is kind of the same as, putting D. Alford in there. And the coverage, he has some really impressive splash plays. You see what he does in that Vikings game especially, and you're like, man, he can be an impact playmaker from the slot. But a lot of the other games, teams haven't really had any issue going at him at all. So I don't fully know where this goes with him. I don't think he's necessarily playing at a starting caliber level with his whole body of work, but the flashes from the young kid are really exciting. So we'll continue to evaluate him as we go, as he gets a +1 here to a 69. Then we got Jesse Bates is going to come down 1. Not the end of the world here. Still an excellent player. Still actually holds, I think, my highest rating for safeties in the league, although Kyle Hamilton is coming for that mark here. But there's just been a reduction in his coverage abilities this year. There's been multiple plays this year where he's given up touchdowns on the back end, and it's just like, who is that Jesse Bates? I'm so used to Jesse Bates always being in the right place, not giving up big plays despite being a playmaking single high free safety, and he's giving up more plays, and he's got less ball production this year too. He's got a couple interceptions, which is great. He's going to do that for you. He's Jesse freaking Bates, but he only has 2 passes defended on this year, so he's on pace for 3 or 4 on the year. He's had 10 the last 2 years as a Falcons DB. So It's just a -1. Not the end of the world. It's just kind of acknowledging he's not having a great year back there. And he did just earn 29. So maybe he's starting to lose that crown as the game's best safety for me. We'll see. We'll continue to keep an eye on it. But the other safety here, the rookie, Xavier Watts, one of my favorite steals of this draft class. Very happy to say I was as high on Xavier Watts as I was, because he has stepped into the league and basically been everything that his draft write-up would tell you he could be, which is a starting caliber safety out the gate. No, he's not the fastest guy, but it doesn't prevent him from making plays on the ball. And he has 5 passes defended this year. That's outstanding production. That's all he did at Notre Dame. And to me, it's like being a safety that's able to impact the passing game. It's so much more about that eye balance and understanding when to take risks, understanding your zone assignment and where you need to be, where the offense is trying to attack you. He's like the opposite of a Darnell Savage or Lewis Cine, these first-round picks that get drafted because they ran 4.3s but have no idea where they're supposed to be. Well, Xavier Watts has enough speed. You know, he ran 4.58, same as Jesse Bates did. But he understands the game. He's been a physical run defender as well. He takes good angles to the ball. He's even been a better tackler than I thought he would be as a rookie. That was the one big knock on him at Notre Dame, is he really did get out-athleted at the point of tackle, even at the college level. But he's at just an 8.8% missed tackle rate this year. That's above average, so he's been really good. It's a +2 for him to a 75. The only reason it's not more is because for a third-round pick, I was already super high on him with that 73 mark. One of the higher floor players in this draft class. He's been outstanding. And then just a couple notes here on the specialists. Younghoe Koo, who was released, went down 5 to a 71. And then Zane Gonzalez, who took his place, has been all right. He's +2 up to a 73. So there are your Falcons. Let's talk about the Carolina Panthers here. Pretty easy choice for their super stud. It's got to be Rico Dowdle, who's stealing the show here in Carolina, stealing the headlines and honestly stealing the job of Chuba Hubbard, which was not going to be easy to do. But when you run as hard as you do and you're as effective as you are, eventually the team's just not really going to have a choice. He's up to 5 yards a pop, 833 yards, places him 4th in the NFL despite not starting for the first month on the year. Yards after contact, he ranks 7th in the league. That's what I think of most with Rico Dowdle, is just how pissed off this guy runs. And then he's shown some breakaway ability too. PFF tracks breakaway yards, which I think are yards that come beyond 15 yards. And he's 10th in the NFL in total breakaway yards. He's even making an impact in the receiving game with 23 catches for 200 yards there as well. Look, I thought he was a decent little pickup as a cheap backup running back that had a lot of volume production in Dallas. I watched a lot of Rico Dowdle with the Cowboys last year, and he turned something on this year that we didn't see on tape last year, man. I mean, again, he was an effective, solid back, but really didn't stand out in any regard. There's a reason Dallas let him out the door, really no problem, and nobody really questioned it, right? And it's to the point that you would think you would see Cowboys fans out there, and the fact that Javonte Williams has been good for them probably helps, but you would think you'd see some Cowboys fans out there saying like, oh, we knew this guy was in there all along, like we never should have let him go. No, I haven't seen a single Cowboys fan saying that. Like, nobody expected this. Nobody. But Rico Dowdle has absolutely been freaking balling out, man. And I'll end on this. He reminds me so much of Isaiah Pacheco in the way that he runs, just so much violence in his running style. It's just, he's like if Isaiah Pacheco had any sense of vision at the running back position. It's really a nice compliment when you run as hard as you do to actually know where you're going. So it's a +6 for Dowdle. And then on the flip side of things with our next player here, I'm going to lower Chuba Hubbard by 1, which places him with the same rating as Rico Dowdle. Now, there's a system to this, right, where you're kind of stacking performances and building up over time. Obviously, Rico Dowdle is playing better than Chuba Hubbard right now, but I don't really know just how far to lower Chuba Hubbard either. And I do think he was amazing last year. I had crowned him, at least in my eyes, as a top 10 running back last year, but this year he's been a little bit banged up and he loses this starting job to Rico Dowdle. I think it's tough to kind of get in a rhythm when you're only getting so many carries. But he has been less effective on his touches. He's at just 8 missed tackles on the year on 91 carries, so that's about a 10% missed tackle rate. Last year, he was about 20%. The yards after contact is down more than a yard on him as well, 2.34 this year to 3.46. So I do think it's necessary to lower him, but I also do love Chuba Hubbard and hope he can get things back on track. And I'm curious to see where this goes because Dowdle is just a 1-year contract. They also, don't forget, still have Jonathan Brooks kind of hanging out there trying to recover from that ACL injury. So the Panthers have some interesting conversations to have about this running back room and the future of it. It's probably not the best use of resources to pay your backup running back $10 million if Chuba Hubbard's going to be that role for them. I wonder if you're a team like the Chiefs maybe that could really use an impact running back if you make a phone call there. Because I really do think there's still a high-end running back in there in Chuba Hubbard as well, even if we have to lower him here. He's only 26 years old. He's only had 846 carries in his career. Still a lot of juice left in the tank, in my opinion. Elite locker room character as well. And it's that reason why I wouldn't be stunned if the Panthers just ate the money and said we're going to have the best backup running back in the league. With that, let's carry on with the pass catchers here. Tetairoa McMillan was also a great candidate for this team's midseason super stud. I cannot say enough about T-Mac. The thing is, anybody that watched my draft analysis, I couldn't shut up about this guy, about how people were overthinking him, how people were too low. I had him as a legitimate blue chip prospect, which is not a term I throw around. Typically only have 0 to 4 blue chip prospects in any given draft class, and T-Mac was one of those dudes for me. So at least from my perspective, I'm not really surprised to see him balling out at the next level, but it's still great to see nonetheless, and he is earning further ratings points here. He gets a +4 up to an 82, but just the way he can move at his size, the routes, the acceleration after the catch, some of the shiftiness after the catch. My pro comp on him couldn't really have aged better if you watch the tape on this guy, where he is the best of both Mike Evans and Drake London. He's a big guy that can be savvy and run quick routes and show shiftiness like Drake London, but he also has the long speed of a Mike Evans to be a vertical presence and get down the field and have pull-away ability after the catch. And then, of course, the ball skills that both those guys have. He's had some drops. That's really the only ding on T-Mac. There's been some rookie moments where him and Bryce are still figuring out where he needs to sit down and stuff. But God, the sky is just the absolute limit for T-Mac. And I got some heat too when I said that the player that he actually reminds me of is like a taller Justin Jefferson. I got slammed for that take, but I continue to see a very similar style of player. Even if it's a little bit different with, T-Mac being 3 inches taller. But regardless, the Panthers are very lucky that a handful of other NFL teams overthought the shit out of this and let T-Mac fall to the 8th pick. And it's been fun to see the production start to tick back up in recent games too. He just had that 130-yard, 2-touchdown performance against the Falcons. Would love to see T-Mac keep this up and bring home Offensive Rookie of the Year. Getting that on his sights is reasonable at this stage. But then another rookie receiver here, Jimmy Horn Jr. It's been very minimal targets, but he's shown some of the separation and juice that he can bring to the table, getting on the field, making some plays. So it's a +1 for him to a 69. I don't have too much more on him. It hasn't been anything crazy or anything. But another wide receiver that has stood out here, especially with Jalen Coker not being able to go for the first half of the year here, Bryson Tremaine, been a nice pickup for this team. He was undrafted out of Stanford, not someone I was really familiar with until he took the field for the Panthers. And I'm like, who's this lanky, awkward receiver lining up in the slot? But he's been effective. He does block, and he has been a bit of a mismatch problem for slot corners and stuff. where he's made some nice catches over the middle of the field to move chains and just kind of showing up. So I had to create him. I didn't have him in the roster, but at a 68 rating as a nice kind of role player, at least for now. And then with these tight ends, both Tommy Tremble and Mitchell Evans are going to go up 3. So it's now a 72 for Tremble, definitely having his best year. And then Mitchell Evans up to a 70, the rookie out of Notre Dame. Really nice compliment between these two guys. Tremble can put his hand in the dirt and be your starting tight end if you're in 11 personnel. He's bulked up a little bit, came into the league about 240. He's playing about 250 now, and that's good. He's having his best year as a run blocker after they did pay him primarily for his run blocking capabilities. But he's showing off some good hands, and most recently had maybe the best receiving play on his career to this point in overtime. Catch and run, bouncing off tackles, showing off his physicality in that sense. So he's really settling in as at least a nice, usable player. I questioned that contract when they gave it to him, but they were looking ahead a little bit, saying, no, he's working at it. He's going to get better inside this offense. We'll give him, I mean, it wasn't cheap. It was like $8 million a year for him, but he's getting closer to being worth that, I think, especially if he keeps getting better in both phases. And then Mitchell Evans is really nice too, because number one, he's just a full-size tight end that's been blocking really hard for this team. He's been an impact in this team's run game, but he's been a reliable receiving target as well. He's made some tough catches, which is what he did at Ohio State. He was definitely a fascinating player because he was coming off that ACL injury in his second to last year at Ohio State when he was really starting to heat up. And then he didn't get to play until later in his final season in college. But there's a lot of potential there for him to be kind of a Cole Kmet-esque entity. And just a slight correction, I think I just said Ohio State. He played at Notre Dame, but what always sticks with me with Mitchell Evans is that incredible one-handed catch he made against Ohio State just before that big ACL injury. But yeah, this is a nice duo because if they do want to come out in 12 personnel, I still like Tommy Tremble off the wing with his athleticism and Mitchell Evans in line. And the two of these guys together have kind of rendered Jatavion Sanders a bit of an afterthought. I'll just say it's a good problem for the Panthers to have. They've got a very intriguing young tight end room there. But then on the offensive line, Ikem Ekwonu just keeps continuing to get better here after that rough start to his career, especially as a pass blocker. He's definitely had his most efficient season to date. So it's a +2 for him, the former top 10 draft pick, definitely heading in the proper direction here, should be due for a pretty damn nice payday for himself pretty soon here. But then the backup tackle, Yosh Nijman, he's had to play both left and right tackle because Ekwonu's missed a couple games and Taylor Moton has missed a couple games. So it's good to see him be able to play both sides of the line there. He's had his issues in pass protection, I'm not going to lie. There's been some moments that I don't think he even showed those lows in Green Bay, getting bullied as a pass protector, so it certainly hasn't all been perfect as a backup tackle, but he has been blocking his ass off, and he is a large human with some decent traits, and he's putting those to use as a run blocker, and in a lot of these starts that he had to get were those big Rico Dowdle games, helping pave the way there. The Dallas game especially, in that massive revenge game for Rico Dowdle. Nijman was pretty sweet at right tackle in that game. And in their upset against the Packers, he had to step in. But then as you slide inside, Damian Lewis has been outstanding. He's just been a nice, incremental growth year by year since he came into the league. Really was a sloppy player early in his Seattle days, but slight improvements year by year. Still wasn't quite where Seattle wanted him to be when he leaves, gets, at this point, a value contract in Carolina, and he's been good here. He's having his best year this year as a pass blocker. He's been a major asset as a run blocker. His traits are like built in a lab for offensive guard play. He's got the beef and the play strength, but the get off on top of it to move guys around. It's just been about tying his hands and feet together, really in both phases, but especially as a pass blocker. And here at his age 28 season, he has, I would say, fully reached his potential as something close to a top 10 guard in the NFL. And then next to him, Cade Mays. I think he has officially earned this center job. He's been vying for it for a couple years now, as they've kind of had this turnstile of centers, right? They've had Austin Corbett for a while. Brady Christensen has had some snaps there. And these have all been guys that have been kind of banged up, missed time, and Cade Mays last year really got onto the scene and was someone we talked a lot about in Studs and Duds last year, playing well, earning some ratings bumps, and really becoming a fascinating player because he was a high recruit, SEC, 4-star, 5-star, depending on the site you look. Had an up and down college career, starting at Georgia, going to Tennessee, and then really being viewed as one of these tackles that probably needs to slide inside and be more of a guard. Just not the best feet. But now he's climbed all the way into center. And I love, with all the light fronts we see in today's NFL, the idea of an athletic 325-pound center that can really displace dudes. And some of his reps as a run blocker are just incredible. And he's far from perfect. He's still fully understanding this position. He is an aggressive mindset. He can miss some blocks. And there's some games where he ends up slipping off some blocks and hurting your run game a little bit. But you watch that Dallas game, especially, if they can find a way to get that guy on a week-to-week basis, I mean, that's Creed Humphrey. And he's only just now played about a season's worth of snaps at center. And he's been overall pretty solid across the board as a pass blocker too. So it's a +3 for Cade Mays. He's up to a 72, but he really does have outstanding potential. He's just 26 years old. I mean, that's only a year or two older than a lot of centers that you end up drafting in today's draft landscape. So I'm excited to see where this goes with Cade Mays. And then we're going to talk about Andy Dalton. Basically what we said about Kirk Cousins, where this year, especially when he's had to play in limited sample sizes, especially when in the Bills game where he had to start. I mean, Andy Dalton said it himself in the post-game press conference. He said, I wasn't good enough out there today for us to be competitive. And that's what you felt, was a quarterback that seems to have had an even further fall off as the backup here than just last year, where he did play and looked like one of the better backups in the league. I don't think you can really count on that version of Andy Dalton right now. It's been night and day when even Bryce Young has been in there. And that does take me to a couple of my notes on the offense before we talk about some of these defensive players for the Panthers. Bryce Young, I at least wanted to talk about him. I still don't feel the need to change his rating at a 74 there. He continues to be this polarizing player where he has just some of the most ass performances any quarterback will have on the year. Look at that Saints game. It's really hard to watch that player and say, yeah, we should raise Bryce Young. But he's had some really good games too. I mean, his most recent, the last 2 weeks especially, it's like, what do you do with this? He had one of the worst performances we'll see from a QB this year, the week before against the Saints defense that has no pass rush. And then he goes out, breaks the Panthers passing record, and gets a huge win on the road in Atlanta, pushing the ball downfield, making plays after the catch, showing the heights that you hoped you were getting in a number one pick at QB. And the rest of the year, it's been pretty shaky with him largely just kind of being an Alex Smith type figure as kind of a point guard for a run-heavy offense here. So I still, at the end of the day, think 74 is the right rating on him, but I wanted to at least have some bit of the Bryce Young conversation here because it's an ever fascinating one. And Xavier Legette, it's a lot of the same types of notes there. Early in the year, it was like I did my wide receiver rankings video after week 4, and I put Xavier Legette in the prospects I don't believe in category, at the very bottom of my tier list. Because it just was starting to feel like, dude, this guy can't catch. He just doesn't understand football. His football awareness is just garbage. And then he's actually been a piece for them really since I made that video. We kind of cursed him into competency, which is great because he's a very fun player. He's had some really nice snags on vertical targets, caught another touchdown this week against Atlanta. He's settled back in as someone as an interesting piece in this overall passing game. I still like the idea of him as the kind of vertical threat, kind of the MVS type of role. You've got your number one in T-Mac. Jalen Coker's a really nice slot piece. Jimmy Horn can get involved as a slot and gadget player. You've got these tight ends. It's a really nice ecosystem if these guys keep developing here with Bryce. But let's talk about the defense on the defensive line, A'Shawn Robinson has really bounced back. I don't know if it's just him saying, wow, my team is actually competent this year. I'm going to try now. I don't know if it's as simple as that, but he has been much better as a run defender. I was a little surprised Carolina held on to him because they signed him 2 years ago, 2024 offseason. They brought him in after he had played a year for the Giants. And he had already had a worse year there for the Giants than he did the 2 years before that with the Rams, where he was really playing like a very quality starting defensive tackle. But he wasn't like an absurd contract. So I figured after 2024, you get Derek Brown back, you spent some money in free agency, you got some guys in the draft. I figured at 30 years old, they would let him go, but they say, no, this D-line was so bad last year, we need all the help we can get. Let's let A'Shawn kind of compete and reestablish his name in the league. And he's very much done that. He's been a very capable run defender. He can play the nose. If you don't want Derek Brown to do that, I think that's a big luxury to let Derek Brown get more one-on-one opportunities and abilities and an ability to split into the backfield and be that impact run defender. Let A'Shawn Robinson sink his hips and, command the double team. So that's been nice. And then he's even gotten 18 pressures on the year, a few sacks. Like he's been a nice 3-down player for them. So it's a +2 for him, back towards relevancy. Good for him. But then on the edge, we have a handful of guys here. Rookie Nick Scorton, really wanted to highlight him as the super stud as well, but you can't go with anyone other than Rico Dowdle for this team. But Scorton's been a slam dunk second-round draft pick. A little bit of a slower start as he had kind of a weird chest injury to start the year. But since he's been back healthy, he's been awesome. And I really see so much of my pro comp on him in George Karlaftis. He's not the most crazy traitsy guy. He doesn't have this dominant bull rush. Doesn't even necessarily always have one way that he kills you as a pass rusher. I think his go-to move is that cross chop, and it's relatively effective. But he's a very active run defender. He's got a ton of size. He's got a large variety of ways that he likes to try and win as a rusher. 2 mixed results, but he does have 21 pressures on the season already on just 226 pass rush snaps. He's gotten in there for some sacks in recent weeks. He's even made impactful plays dropping into coverage. Just such a good, balanced overall player. I always saw him as a very projectable high-end number 2 edge rusher. And yeah, someday you're going to want your Brian Burns replacement. You're going to want someone that's closer to a true number 1 guy. I don't know if Scorton has the upside to be that necessarily. Maybe he surprises and continues to get to that point eventually. But if he keeps up what he's doing right now, he can absolutely be this team's George Karlaftis. And to get that at the 51st pick in the draft, huge win for this Panthers team that has been desperately needing some D-line help. And then some of these other pieces are playing out right. Princely Umanmielen is a 3rd-round pick. He's had some good splash plays as a pass rusher. It's certainly going to be a work in progress for him. You can't really play him on early downs. He's been as big of a liability against the run as you could have expected based on his college tape. But he's got a handful of sacks, 9 pressures on 100 pass rush snaps. And the wins that he does have, you see the bend and the ability to get after the QB. So it's a +1 for him, up to a 70. Still a long way to go there, though. Right now, still just kind of a interesting developmental pass rusher as a rookie. And then Pat Jones. It's a bummer he got hurt because he was actually playing really well. Much to my surprise, I couldn't believe that they handed out a contract of decent proportions to him after really being an irrelevant player for the Vikings for his 4 years there. But he had started to show some decent run defense snaps in Minnesota last year, and he's continued to do that here for the Panthers for a run defense that's been one of the most improved units in the entire league. And he's also splashed as a pass rusher in a way that I haven't really seen from him in years past. He was up to 10 pressures and a sack through just his first 4 games, 101 total pass rush snaps. So you're at that 10% pressure rate you want to look for. So it's a +1 for him, for 4 games played here with Carolina. The bummer is, though, needed back surgery and is out for the rest of the year. So it's going to be a battle back. Back injuries are always scary with these NFL players. But let's go to the linebacker room. These 2 guys have played really well. They're not superstars. I'm not even ready to say this is the linebacker room of the future or anything like that, but compared to what they had last year, these guys have been more than adequate and have been major contributors to what I said with this run defense being, probably the most, I'll just say one of the most improved units in the league. They've been top half in run defense this year, really outside of that Bills game that was rough. They've largely been competitive this year in that phase. And I think Christian Roseboom here, who gets a +5 from a 67 to a 72, the Rams let him go for a reason. He was not good. He was a huge liability in that playoff game against the Eagles. And oftentimes teams will react and maybe even overreact to what ended their season. And he was probably the biggest contributor to their loss, just unable to get in place to slow down Saquon Barkley as that game went on. And he was bad last year, but Roseboom seems to have gotten better. He has been much more active around the line of scrimmage. He's already almost at the amount of defensive stops he had last year on about half the amount of opportunities. He had a big forced fumble in that Packers game, knocking that ball out against Savion Williams. And he's just been a good overall presence for them. It's a 72 rating. He's not perfect. His missed tackle rate's still pretty high. He was still a pretty big issue earlier in the year. So it's one of those deals where, is he developing within this system or is he running hot and cold? We need to continue to evaluate that, get a larger sample size of him here on this team. But he's been a nice addition, to say the least, for Carolina. And then Trevin Wallace, on the right trajectory here. He's not even 23 years old yet, was a third-round pick last year, and I really thought they did a disservice to Trevin Wallace throwing him out there last year, where he looked horrible at times. He looked like he had no idea what he was doing, and there's still some snaps like that this year, especially earlier in the year in coverage. Teams were going right at Trevin Wallace, and he was looking around like he was adrift at sea, as the offense is scoring touchdowns on him. But we haven't had those moments as of late. He does have a couple nice pass breakups in recent weeks as well. And he's got that missed tackle rate under 10%, nice 7.8%. He's doing some good cleanup work right now. I really liked what we saw in that Dolphins game, especially. When I was previewing that game, I was like, Devon Achane, Jalen Waddle. I think Tyreek Hill was still healthy at that point. But I was saying, like, this offense could really put these linebackers in a bind and fool them out in space. And Trevin Wallace was one of the better players in that game. So we're definitely seeing him figure things out with the remarkable physical traits he has. This is the definition of what you want to invest in if you're looking for a future linebacker in the third round. 6'2", 240 pounds, 4.4 speed. Like, it's all in there for him to really click and become a star player. He's not there yet, but you're starting to see things go in the right direction with him. And then you go to the Panthers secondary. They've gotten some good contributions back here as well as this defense continues to figure things out. Mike Jackson just continues to check boxes. He's a +1 up to a 75. If you would have told me 2 years ago when they brought him over from Seattle that he was going to really settle in as their kind of at least medium-term option as their CB2, I would have looked at you silly, but that's really been the case. There's some games that are worse than others. Like, he is this clunky 6'1", 215-pound corner that the wrong wide receiver can really expose his ability to move out in space. But that length is a big asset for him. He's able to contest the football. He's got 7 passes defended this year to 14 last year. Like, his ball production has been very impressive. He's only been penalized 2 times this year. That's always been an issue with him. Getting a little grabby when he does get lost down the field. He's been more composed. So he's just settled in as a nice CB2 for this team. And then into the slot, this is interesting. I'm going to reveal both Shaw Smith-Wade and Corey Thornton here. So Smith-Wade's had a really nice year in the slot. Year 2 for him after being a mid-day 3 pick last year. He's tackling well. He's got a couple nice plays on the ball. He hasn't been perfect in coverage, but he's earned a nice boost to a 73 rating here as just a capable slot corner and a young player that is maybe settling in as a bona fide starting slot corner. You talk about the improvements to run defense. His ability to kind of tackle in the alley there and be a physical presence has been a big part of this team's success on defense. But in this last week against Atlanta, we saw Corey Thornton actually out-snapping Shaw Smith-Wade in the slot. And I do want to know if Panthers fans have some insight to this, what was going on there, because Smith-Wade did play like 15 snaps, but Corey Thornton got 46 and had a really good game. Beautiful pass breakup in there, was targeted 7 times from the slot there, but gave up just 4 receptions for 36 yards. Might not sound amazing, but it's like good for a slot corner. If you're getting targeted 7 times, you're only giving up 8 yards of completion, and you're defending some of those balls. That's what you want to see. So this is an undrafted player out of Louisville that didn't really test well enough to get drafted, frankly. Ran in the 4.6s. That's kind of a death sentence for a lot of these front offices. But flashed this recent week that he can play, and I'm curious if that was this team really likes Corey Thornton, and he was playing well, and they just didn't really put Charles Smith-Wade back out there. If Smith-Wade is injured, kind of where this is going. I wasn't able to really find any information on this, but it will be something to track as we move forward. So it's a +4 for Corey Thornton for that. Really just the one performance. He did play earlier in the year against Miami as well, and had a pass breakup in that game too. So it wasn't the first time we've seen flashes, but this most recent week especially was kind of like, there might be something there. And then into the safety group, Lathan Ransom has been a very polarizing player. Kind of reminds me of the safety version of Servasia Dennis, where he's been an outstanding run defender, rallying from the second level. This team loves to play that pre-snap 2-shell look. He's been able to fill the run, stepping down, hasn't missed a tackle this year on 25 total tackles. Yet on just 141 coverage snaps, he's been credited with 9 receptions into his coverage for 154 yards and a touchdown allowed. He's been brutal as a coverage defender. So he's getting some love here for the run defense stuff. It's a +2 up to a 68. And that's good to see, because he would dip his head at Ohio State and miss some tackles, a little bit over aggressive at times. Seems that hopefully he's cleaned that up. Got to improve the coverage, of course, but he's made an impact again to that much improved run defense for this team. And then the last player here, the kicker, Ryan Fitzgerald, certainly hasn't been flawless this year. There's some misses in there, but was rated pretty low at a 70, so he goes up to a 72. And then we have our final team, the New Orleans Saints. And for their super stud, it was actually a pretty easy choice for me. It's going to be Jonas Sanker, the rookie safety out of Virginia. And man, this is what makes draft analysis so hard, because I was pretty hard on the Saints for taking Sanker over Xavier Watts, who's also looked great, who we praised for the Falcons. But you see how he's playing for the Saints, and you understand it. And for all of the Lewis Seans and Darnell Savages and these safeties that do get overdrafted because of their 40 time and physical testing profile, sometimes it is just really nice to get the freak athlete, because if it does click, you can see some really special stuff and some plays that someone like Xavier Watts just isn't physically capable of. And in the case of Jonas Sanker, it certainly hasn't all been perfect. The missed tackles that could show up in college have continued to be a big problem for him in the league. He's missing 18% of his tackle attempts. He's given up some bigger plays in coverage. You see the big touchdown against the Patriots, where Demario Douglas has a route developing in front of his face, and he just kind of watches it go for a big touchdown. There's still learning moments and room to go for Jonas Sanker, but my goodness, like, his traits and his ability to trigger and make stuff happen have really stood out for this team, and I am stoked to see what type of upside we could see from this kind of guy. There's like shades of a Derwin James type of playmaker in there, and I don't put that lightly, but the first thing I noticed when he took the field for the Saints, I was like, he looks even bigger than I saw from the college broadcasts at Virginia. And at first I was like, oh, maybe it's just the improved camera quality and camera angles. And then I looked, and he's actually put on about 6 pounds from what he played at Virginia. And it's not a ton, but it can make a little difference. A little extra stopping power in there, a little extra play strength to get off blocks. But he looks like big and fast, and he tested well. But the play strength aspect is something that's really stood out with me, with his ability to take on some of these blocks and have some of that hit power upon arrival. So that's shown, especially when he's running the alley, taking on screens. There's a play against the Bucs with Sean Tucker, who we talked about the explosiveness he has once he gets out in space. Well, Jonas Sanker has contain on and outpaces him to the sideline, which is something no one on the Bills defense was able to do last week. So you can see the traits on full display. There's another play in that game against the Bills where he baits Josh Allen into an interception from single high, where he takes a step back towards the middle of the field, sees the deep route developing to the left side, waits till Allen throws it, and he shows off the speed and range that even someone like Xavier Watts might not have there. So to see some of the stuff really clicking for him is extremely exciting for him. Even if there's stuff to clean up, he's got to be a more consistent tackler. Some of the gaffes in coverage have been there, but you got to be excited. And it is just, I love these draft rivalries, interdivision, where, I think they were back to back within like 2 picks of each other to see who made the right choice. And I was obviously wrong I think at this point I can say I was wrong to be critical of the Saints for taking Sanker. Clearly the upside is in there and worth swinging for at that stage, and there's enough of a football player in there to take him in that spot. But it could just be a case of both these teams ended up with the right guy. Either way, you're really encouraged by the early signs. It's a +5 for Sanker, up to a 72. Should be just the beginning for him as he continues to polish up his craft. But next up, I'm going to talk about both these quarterbacks here for the Saints, because they're both going up in the ratings. They're both actually at a 69 at this point in time. Shuck a +1 from a 68 up to a 69, and then Rattler starting at a 66 there. But let's split these two guys up. They're both very interesting conversations. They've both, I think, done well relative to expectations for the amount of playing time we've gotten to see from them. Both deserve to go up, even if one has edged out the other. And that is Tyler Shuck, who didn't win this job out of camp, but I'm glad they went to him. And like that Panthers game, you see why his upside is so underrated. So many people, I think, focus on the age of him coming out of Louisville and forget about the fact that, well, he was a highly recruited dude, was supposed to be the next Justin Herbert at Oregon, dealt with a million injuries, had to bounce around college football. But you watch what he did at Louisville when he really figured it out, and you're like, well, he's got a really good arm. He's got excellent pocket presence, which is maybe the most underrated aspect of QB upside, is how well do you manage pressure and extend plays inside and out of the pocket and buy time to create. That's really what QB upside is about, is what do you bring to the table beyond the infrastructure of your offense. Shuck does a lot of that. Honestly, more than Spencer Rattler. People have this image of Spencer Rattler running around at South Carolina. Rattler actually took a frustrating amount of checkdowns on third downs, didn't create as much as he could have, played much more of a point guard style QB than Shuck showed, especially in that Panthers game. But yeah, I think Shuck and his performance against the Panthers was exactly why I liked him coming out. And I think with some time to kind of compete for this job, learn the offense, get acclimated to the NFL, you saw the processing was pretty solid in that game. Far from perfect. How could it be, right? Like, this isn't even a great infrastructure for a young QB, but I'm really excited to keep watching him. That was the third game he played in, was that Panthers game where he was really good. I mean, he was the core reason they win that game. Some of the big throws, some of the play extension moments, multiple big throws where there's nothing there, and he buys time and gets the ball downfield. There was a big completion to Juwan Johnson earlier, and then he had another one that I think turned into a touchdown in the second half, thinking back a couple weeks there. But you look at the other two games he played in. The first one was when Rattler got benched, and they put Shuck in down by like multiple scores against the Bucs. Like, not a real opportunity. That's more of a warm-up for him to just kind of get acclimated to real game time, knowing that he was probably going to start the next week. And then they go and play the Rams, which was like a crazy record day of ball control by the Rams. I think it was the record for the last 20 years of time of possession. The Saints had 14 minutes with the football to the Rams 46 minutes. So, like, yeah, some of that is Shuck not being able to beat a great Rams pass defense. But also it's not all his fault as well that the defense just couldn't get off the damn football field and they couldn't get anything going offensively. So like the first 2 games were kind of a wash. His first real start deserves the +1 bump here, and I'm excited to see kind of how he plays and if he cements himself as the Saints starter into next year. I will just finish this up by reiterating the point. Don't sleep on the upside of Tyler Shuck. I think it was an easy choice if you're in the second round and you wanted someone that could actually be a top 12-ish quarterback of all the guys available at that point in time. I definitely think Shuck has more of that upside than even like Shedeur had at that point in time. So it was kind of an awkward pick, but that was kind of the main selling point for me, was underrated upside from this player. So we'll see where this goes. And then for Rattler, I kind of hinted at it, but I do think he's a playable QB. Like, they were competitive in games with him. I think as a backup type of ball, point guard, ball distributor, we saw a lot of that with Rattler, where he clearly won this job with a better understanding of the offense coming out of training camp. He's got the arm talent to take some of these design deep shots and bring that to your offense. But I do just think the overall poise in have to have it third downs, there's a reason they lost a lot of these close games. When push came to shove and they needed a drive, or they needed to keep a drive alive on a 3rd and 8 when the defense was really dialing things up, those were the moments where Spencer Rattler just leaves a lot to be desired. Like I said, it was a lot of like 3rd and 8. He takes the drag that gets tackled, short of the sticks, and the Saints punt. There's a lot of that, like backup types of decisions from him. And then he started to, probably feel the pressure for his job a little bit with all these losses. Knowing that Shuck was drafted so high, I think he started to take some more risks, and they weren't good risks. The turnover-worthy play rate skyrocketed. There was a really ugly sequence against the Bears. So you started to see some of those limitations in his game. But would he be the best QB on the New York Jets right now? Would he be the best QB on the Cleveland Browns right now? Also probably true. So he does deserve to go up. There was a lot of time on these QBs, but that's been one of the main talking points on this Saints team, is what's going on with that room this year. We got some other players in the offense on the move. I am going to lower Alvin Kamara. You had to know with his career workload, he's seen about 2,500 touches at the NFL level at this point. The fall off into his 30s was pretty predictable. I do think we're seeing that. I mean, that is the average running back. Kind of falls off a cliff around this age. Not everybody is Derrick Henry and can just keep dominating into their 30s. And with Kamara, he's at the lowest yards per attempt in his career. He's fumbled the ball 3 times. His missed tackle force rate is still okay, but it's down. His yards after contact is the 2nd lowest in his career. I still think he's had some decent runs. His vision, experience at the position, he still has like a decent, strong core and can bounce off some tackles. So he's not a useless player at this point, but he definitely needs to come down. So it's a -2 for him down to an 80. And I imagine that's going to keep going down as we move forward with this series. But Kendre Miller, on the flip side of things, it's such a bummer he got hurt, because he actually led the league in missed tackle force rate at the time he got hurt. There were actually a lot of shades of a young Alvin Kamara in what Kendre Miller was doing earlier in the year. He was just a really hard guy to get to the ground. Felt like he was really starting to figure things out as a talented 3rd-round pick in his 3rd year here, just 23 years old. And the opportunity for him to kind of take this backfield by the horns was going to be there. So just a really poorly timed injury from his perspective, but hopefully he can get back out there and have an opportunity to continue showing some of the upside he showed this year in really, 47 carries on the year. So it wasn't a crazy volume or anything like that, but he had 15 missed tackles forced on those 47 carries. That's crazy. So it's a +2 for Kendre Miller. And then you look at the offensive line. Kelvin Banks, the rookie, has absolutely passed the test out the gate. Was, in my eyes, just a really high floor tackle prospect, really good hands, good enough feet, strong player, physical run blocker. It's been all that. It's a +2 for him, up to a 75. He's been well worth the draft pick. And honestly, with him, it's not like your typical rookie where there's some games that are a lot better than others. I do think we're seeing a trend of him playing even better in recent weeks as he develops as a young player here. But some rookies, it's like more of a roller coaster type of year for these tackles. I think with Calvin Banks, who was just such a high floor player, it's like he's just been steady. I don't know that we've necessarily seen dominant performances. The closest thing to that was this recent week where he was effectively shut down in pass protection against the Panthers defensive line, which isn't anything really special. I think it's been much more of the case with Banks that you just haven't had to really worry about him. And oftentimes that's as good of a thing as you can say about a rookie tackle. But Luke Fortner as well, their starting center right now, because Eric McCoy sadly just can't stay healthy. I mean, he's one of the best centers in the league, but just so much missed time over the years. But good to see Luke Fortner playing his best ball. I mean, he was a starting center as a third-round pick for the Jags for 2 years, and they kind of forced him into a starting role. I think when he wasn't ready, he always had potential as a center, but they eventually bench him. They go to Mitch Morse. He's bounced back. I mean, this is the first time we've seen Luke Fortner in over a year, really, and he's been damn good as this team's center. This is really exciting if you're a Saints fan, knowing that McCoy has struggled to stay healthy, and to have a guy step in with 2 years of starting experience that's just kind of taken a step back and maybe leaping forward to be more of a quality player. This could be legit here. So it's been, 3 starts. It's a +2 to a 68 from 3 starts. So we can't go crazy and leap to conclusions, but you got to be encouraged. Not just by the fact that he's been a lockdown pass blocker, he's allowed just 2 total pressures through those 3 games. That's outstanding. But he's been moving people in the run game decently well too. So that'll be fun to track. And that's our last offensive player there. Let's go to the defensive side of things. Brian Brzee just keeps showing up to me. It's a +2 for him, just at a 74, year 3, first round pick. Probably hasn't come along as the complete player that you were hoping he would be at this point. And I really liked him coming out. I thought he would be further along. He is still extremely inconsistent. Pad levels still can get too high. He does play like a lighter defensive tackle. You'll see a lot of reps where he gets blown off the ball. But talk about a splash play defensive tackle, man. Some of his pass rushing wins are so fun. He has made an impact. And he is one of these guys that when he wins very quickly and really impacts plays. And he's even had some continued moments against the run, splitting into the backfield, making an impact in that phase. He is on pace, or he is on track to outpace his previous year marks on defensive stops. So that's at least good to see, even if, the overall profile is not perfect, but in the right direction for Brzee. And then Chase Young has come back in recent weeks and honestly playing some of his best football. And he was pretty good for the Saints last year, kind of on that cheap 1-year deal. And they're able to retain him on a pretty nice extension this offseason. Well, he's been killing dudes as a pass rusher since he came back week 6. He's got 16 pressures on just 96 pass rush snaps. He's gotten involved on 4 total sacks, some of them half sacks, so his total is 3 sacks. But he's not going against slouches either. Like, he was working around Tristan Wirfs against the Bucs. That was maybe even his best game. But he was beating Ike Mekwonu on the Panthers, Will Campbell on the Patriots, Alaric Jackson for the Rams. Like, these are legit starting tackles that he's just kind of worked right around. So he's looking twitched up and in good shape. He's 26 years old. Like, it's a big deal for him to, we'll see if he can kind of keep this rate up, but he's playing, I don't want to say up to his potential because it was literally as high as it could go coming out. Like, he was supposed to be what Myles Garrett has been based on the hype he had coming out. But if he can settle in as like a number 1 pass rusher off the edge for this team for the extent of the contract they gave him, at least, that's a huge deal for this team. And then, hey, credit where credit's due. Cameron Jordan, who I've been hard on over the last few years, basically just asking for him to retire because it just hasn't been there for him. There wasn't a huge reason for him to play great for Brandon Staley, having to stand up, be an outside linebacker. He could have just rode this off into the sunset. No one would have given a shit. on a 1-8 football team or whatever. But hey, he's been standing up as a 2-point rusher and getting off blocks, impacting the run. I've even seen some impressive bull rush wins from him. Like, he's still bringing it. So credit where credit's due. It's a +1 for Cam Jordan. I think he's having his best year in a couple years, revitalized for one reason or another here. And then some more edge players. So Chris Rumpf, he's followed Brandon Staley over here from the Chargers. He's a nice, slippery run defender. He's earned some snaps here. Was an interesting kind of speed rusher coming out of Duke, and he's clearly carved out a nice role on this defense. On the flip side of things, where Rumpf gets a +2 to a 69, Carl Granderson, I don't think, has responded to this very different scheme very well. Granderson is one of these true heavy-handed edge rushers that's turned into a really nice player inside Dennis Allen's defense. I just don't think he's comfortable. Maybe he's not healthy, but I think it really is a comfort thing for him. You just haven't felt his presence in either phase. His run stops are down about half the rate of last year, and his pressure rate has fallen off a cliff. Calling my shot right now, Chicago Bears send a 5th-round pick for Carl Granderson on about March 22nd. We'll see. We'll see how accurate we are on that one, but it feels kind of like a lock to me for him to head out back to reunite with Dennis Allen for a team that needs a number 2 edge rusher. But then at linebacker, Demario Davis. Again, credit where credit's due. Demario Davis could have just coasted into the sunset on a bad football team and no one would have given a shit. But he has even been better than the last couple of years, and that's saying something. But it's a +2 for Davis. But after the last couple of years, he's still been excellent, but he's lost a couple ratings points over the last couple of years, kind of fallen down from that 90s level. But at 36 years old, he's going to be 37 at the end of the year. Career year? It's maybe a stretch, but dude, he's been on a mission this year. It's been so fun to watch. This Saints run defense has been relatively steady, and I think you got to point to Demario Davis as the primary reason. I mean, he still gets off blocks as good as any linebacker in the entire league. He arrives with a purpose. It's just, I'm ready, I think, to start talking about Demario Davis as a Hall of Fame player. I think to still be playing at this level at 37 years old. If Levante David gets all this praise as a likely Hall of Famer, I think Demario Davis also deserves that. I mean, these two guys in this NFC South, it's been kind of hard to separate these guys in my mind for so long now that I think if we're going to talk about Levante David as a Hall of Famer, I think Demario Davis needs to be right there with him. So he's back up into the high 80s, +2, 85 to an 87. But Pete Werner has been kind of losing snaps in this Brandon Staley defense. His missed tackle rate has plummeted. It's typically been pretty steady in that regard, but he's down to a 14.3% missed tackle rate this year. He's been getting beat in coverage and losing snaps to the rookie Danny Stutzman here that's going to go up 1. Even something called Isaiah Stallbird has taken a drive or 2 from Pete Werner over the last few weeks. But he just is kind of fading away here in New Orleans. I still kind of believe in him to bounce back somewhere else, but it doesn't feel like this is the right spot for him. It's a -1 for him down to a 76. But Danny Stutzman's been flying around. He showed up on some run plays specifically, and his speed and youthful enthusiasm to pursue the football deserves a little +1 here. He still has a long way to go. He's still missed some tackles. I still think his feel and coverage needs a lot of work, but could be something there for the 4th-round pick. And then another rookie here, Quincy Riley. He keeps earning more and more playing time here. Another 4th-round pick out of Louisville. So both these guys there on early day 3 are getting out there, showing if they can, maybe be viewed as starters for them as they head into 2026. That's really what this season is all about. So it's smart for this team to play Quincy Riley over like an Isaac Yiadom, who you have. But Riley's made the most of it. He's had a pass breakup in 3 out of the last 4 games. For a Brandon Staley defense that does like to play off zone. He's been targeted 24 times for just 13 receptions. That's actually really quite strong. 54% reception percentage for an off zone style system. That'll play. And he's another one of these kind of instinctive, physical, smart, high IQ Louisville corners. Reminded me a lot of like Jarvis Brownlee coming out. So he earns a +3 here. He's up to a 69. And if he keeps playing at this level, I think we will be revisiting him at the postseason studs and duds, talking about him as, you know, a nice CB2 in this system, opposite of Kool-Aid. And then in the slot there, Alontae Taylor, he's never been a perfect player and probably never will be. He's an ultra aggressive go-getter at the slot corner position, just very game to game in terms of consistency. But there's just something about him that I really like about Alontae Taylor. It was last year, it's this year. The way he flies to the ball, I think the energy he brings this defense, the way he's matured off the field. Not that he was immature to begin with, but I think he's really turned into kind of one of the heartbeats of this defense. I think when you play the Saints defense, you've felt an overall like energy and physicality about them. Obviously, Demario Davis plays a large part of that too, but Alontae Taylor plays into that. He'll bust coverages, he'll miss tackles, he'll frustrate you at times, but I like him. It's a +1 for him. He's an upcoming free agent. I'm curious to see kind of what happens with him. I would love Alontae Taylor, ironically here, playing with the Saints, but a role that I always call back to, the PJ Williams role in this defense, where it's that sixth defensive back, where you're just a buzz safety, kind of almost separate from the rest of the coverage call, where you're in a responsibility where you're either trying to take one guy out of the play, where it's a zone call, but you're focusing on the primary read of the offense, or you're in a true bracket coverage, or you're just in lurk mode where you're reading the QB's eyes, trying to make a play. If it's a screen, you're gonna keep an eye out on that and go blow it up. Like, that's what I think of when I think of Alontae Taylor. So as a full-time starting slot corner, might be a little bit too inconsistent to be a star player in that role, but I think he's got a place in the NFL. Anyway, we've got a couple specialists here before we wrap things up. Blake Grupe, the kicker, has struggled this year. 3 for 6 on 50-plus yarders, 2 for 4 on 40-plus yarders especially. The range has been an issue for him. And then the rookie punter, Kai Kroger, has been okay. +3 up to a 72. But that is it. We have finished the Midseason Studs and Duds series. Took about a week longer than I had originally anticipated, but thank you everybody that has either watched this episode, or you just clicked on your team, or if you've binged all 32 team breakdowns here. Thank you so much for watching. I do have an announcement here. I've talked about this in a couple of episodes here, but I've collected a lot of feedback from you guys, and I've thought a lot about this. Obviously, this is my longest standing series on this channel, so any types of changes I make with it have to be heavily considered. But as you guys have seen, this series is a massive time commitment. It took up almost a month of content between the research and editing the players, putting the Madden roster out to you guys, which I know a lot of you guys still care about, and then putting these videos together, which is also a lot. It took up about a month of the middle of the season here. So when that much is going into a series and I'm just not getting too much back, I mean, it's delivering to the series and the channel diehards that love studs and duds. And it's not going anywhere. Relax. Like, I'm not taking studs and duds off the market here. But the unfortunate thing is this series doesn't make much money for me. I typically lose subscribers every time I post one of these. It really is just for the channel diehards. So after thinking a lot about it and collecting feedback from you guys, I have made the decision that Studs and Duds moving forward is going to be a Patreon exclusive series. That'll pick up when we get to the postseason for Studs and Duds. It will be just a part of the lowest tier on Patreon. So if you want Studs and Duds, just $2.50 for the month. Or if you just want to purchase one individual division, that can be done for $5. And then honestly, what I will probably do is randomly select one division to be available to the public here on YouTube as kind of a promotion to let people know that this series is going on Patreon. So if you're lucky, your division might end up here on YouTube. And then also the YouTube memberships. I will set that up as well so that you can get access to this series through the YouTube memberships as well. I know it's a decision that's not going to sit well with everybody, and I'm making this decision understanding that. And I am sorry if that's frustrating news to you. I do hope that you consider following the series over if you enjoy it. But it's just something that at this stage in this channel, in my career, financially speaking, I owe it to myself to see how this goes. It is very challenging to have a month that really isn't making much money or growing the channel for me, if that makes sense. But I also can't take this series away because I know you guys. I know what this series means to the NFL sickos out there. So it still needs to happen. But this is the direction we're going to go moving forward. So I hope you understand and consider signing up on Patreon or YouTube memberships here in the future too, or right now, but in the future, especially when we get to the postseason studs and duds. So there is the big announcement there. At the end of the day, thank you so much for watching these videos, for hitting that like button. If you have or have not done that, please do. But I'm out of here. We got lots of great content heading your way. We're going to dive into positional tier makers here. We're going to start getting into some draft content. I think the next thing, and I know I'm rambling here at this point, but what is Studs and Duds for if we're not rambling? But I think the next draft content I'm going to do is I'm going to start watching some of these top quarterbacks. Probably going to watch the full film on Patreon as like a film watch through, and then I will report back here with kind of like a summary of like what I saw in the kind of first look at these top QBs. So I've got that on the radar for the next couple of weeks. We've got some fun podcast episodes coming, you name it. So lots of great content heading your way that I've been ready to get into with Studs and Duds wrapping up here. Feels good to be through it. It was a lot, but we made it. So thank you guys. I'll see you very soon. Peace.